to our virtual tour. This is now our third one, so we should be old hats, but it's 9 a.m. on Sunday morning, and I'm still drinking my coffee. My name is Catherine Fillmore. I'm a project coordinator here at Ford Design Build. I have with me Miranda Frye, our principal designer on this project, and also Jeff Forward, our esteemed creative director and owner of the company.
Hello.
A few housekeeping items before we get started on the tour. You might notice there's a couple of views you can toggle between: gallery view, full screen view. Play with that so that you're getting the best view of the project. We'll be answering all the questions after the tour. Feel free, if you want to actually type into your chat box. So down at the bottom of the screen, you'll see a little chat with a bubble on it. And let's practice that right now. Pull up that chat box and everybody tell us what your room is, your room that's first on your list for remodeling.
And we come back and talk about that a little bit, but please know this is a no pressure. We're not going to be calling you about whatever room you're going to be adding in.
So it's just a chance to use the chat feature. But go ahead and try it out and type something in, just to get comfortable with that. We do have everybody muted, but we will unmute you after the tour, or you can unmute yourself. And one other thing I just want to let you know, we won't be answering any questions related to price or location, and that's to maintain the homeowner's privacy, but also every project's really different. This isn't plucking something off of a shelf. Every project through its development, we get at budget as we're designing and developing the project. So a price for one project doesn't necessarily relate to a price for another project. And then one other thing, feel free to leave early. Oh, hi, Nicole. Feel free to leave early. We will have a little right there. There's a link in the chat screen if you would like to reach out to us and contact us about any of your projects. That's really the best way to do it. But great, thanks everybody for chiming in. I see we have a couple of screen porches, bathrooms, and kitchens, which is awesome. With that being said, I'd like to introduce Jeff and invite him to say a few words about our company.
Hello, hope everyone is doing well, and good morning. So we are a design build company, and just to give you a quick explanation of what that is, all of our designers and our project managers and our carpenters are all working under one roof. And we chose this business model a long time ago because we really felt it's the best way to deliver the best experience for a client. And this project is a perfect example of that, with the teamwork between Miranda and Tim Frinke, our project manager, and our carpenters, and with our clients included. So take it away, Miranda, and let's show off this awesome basement, which doesn't feel like a basement. Sorry.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're so happy to have you. So my role this morning, we're going to take a look at the befores, what we landed on, our process in terms of design, or at least touching on it a bit, and then we'll run through the Matterport. So I'm going to start by sharing the before presentation with you. All right, so as you can see, this is a floor plan. This was the floor plan of their existing space when we first went in there. This garage space, when you come in, this is all on the same level here. And when you come into this unfinished basement, you'll notice one of the key things are kind of the structure that was involved here. And there was a big steel beam here. There are steel columns. You have the furnace and the mechanicals over here. This dash line here is representing the trunk line or the ductwork from the furnace. And so those are things that we need to consider and work around, given the ceiling height and making it look less like a basement. So again, those are just kind of things we had taken into consideration, in addition to the fact that the homeowner had done some of his own framing and insulation. And so they came to us because they had intended to finish the basement out themselves, but due to their busy work schedules, it just wasn't going at the pace that they were hoping it was going to be finished by. And so they really needed help making their dream become a reality, just with cohesive design, and just because it was moving really slow. One of the other things to consider in this space too is they had a hydronic floor system. So there was in-floor heating in the concrete. And so that role will continue throughout this process, in addition to the framing and the insulation. So just to kind of show you a few pictures of where we started here. So you can see this was that big open space. You can see some of the framing and the insulation that was existing. Again, that steel beam and these steel columns that run through the space. There was actually plumbing on this back wall. And here you can see another shot of that steel structure. You can see the furnace and that ductwork back here. Again, some more framing. This particular spot here that goes back towards the back of the basement there. And this played a key role as well, because this window actually is higher than the ductwork was. And so that played a role in how we moved forward with that bedroom space and how we played with that ceiling. You can see this was an existing concrete wall that they had. So definitely some work that still needs to be done to really make this a reality for them. Here is the final floor plan. So as you come in from the garage, this was actually more of like a split level. So if you come up the stairs, this was the entry to the house. And we did a little powder room here at the bottom, a wet bar in this space. And as you come into more of that big open space with those large windows, this is a big rec space with a fireplace and a dry bar. And in the back, that was that window here that we were just talking about. And then as we come into here, they wanted an ensuite bathroom to this bedroom in the space. So once we landed on an overall layout, that jumped more of our design process, and that led us into inspirations. Really building a verbal vocabulary of what they like. And in this space, you can see I had talked about adding a fireplace, and these were some of the initial fireplace designs with a combination of wood, using cement, just framing out, maybe drywall. So again, there were a lot of different inspirations. And this led us to using we use a program called ArchiCAD. And this is a 3D image of our final inspiration and our final plan in terms of the design. And you can see here, this gives us a good visual representation of what it's going to look like. We also did a detail in the ceiling and other trim details throughout the space. Again, you'll see that reflected as we go through the Matterport. But one specific area was here in the ceiling. There is a circular soffit in the space, and that detail is reflected up in that soffit as well. And then another inspiration for the bathroom that's down there, this long linear niche, this warm walnut vanity, and some black and white fixtures to really keep it clean and modern. And here's where we landed. So again, this warm walnut vanity, that black and white scope, this long linear niche. So again, as we go through this process, we're really building along the way, the entire way, from a visual impact, but also a written impact. And from there, I'm going to jump into the Matterport here. And here is the bottom of the stairs. So if you recall, I talked about this is coming in from the garage, this wall right here. And then off to the right here is the powder room. And if I spin around, there's the stairs right to that main level entrance, just to kind of get you located in the space. So we're going to start here in the bathroom. And this is that little powder room underneath the stair. You can see the stair that goes up. This was a pretty key component. This used to be actually a full bathroom for a previous owner, and they did have water issues. But this homeowner really didn't have a need for a full bathroom here. They liked having it in this location because you could use it as you come off the garage, but also as you enter into the space from the front entry. And if they're entertaining, someone wouldn't be required to go through the private space of the bedroom to get to use the bathroom. So it really served multiple purposes for them. I'm going to spin around. I'm going to try and not go too fast. I'm going to come.
Hey, Miranda.
Yeah.
So tell me more about that wood floor in the basement.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. So this was an engineered wood floor that is floating. And it really played into the fact, because if you remember, we have that hydronic floor system. So it had to work with that system and allow heat transfer without doing anything crazy to the floor itself. So this product is called CARES, and it allowed us to achieve that heat transfer without having any issues, and still get that continuous look from upstairs to downstairs. So their upstairs floor, excuse me, is actually very similar to this in terms of the overall look.
That's a neat product to have.
Yeah, it is very cool.
Yeah.
As we get a little bit closer, I'm going to show you the wet bar here. So you can see the really clean lines here in the cabinets and in the hardware, and also in the shelving here. These are custom walnut floating shelves. And this backsplash here is a ceramic handmade wall tile. And we did it in that vertical fashion to pull in that modern aesthetic that they have upstairs. And you can also see in this space, it's big and wide and open, and that was done purposefully, actually. So the homeowner is planning to get a table there for games, hosting, and that sort of function, but they didn't want it to function like a kitchen. We did have conversations around putting an island there and additional seating, but they really like the idea of flexibility and having it open. And if they needed to move the table back and forth, they could.
I love the open shelves there.
Yeah, isn't that fun? It really adds some warmth to the space, just because with that modern look, oftentimes it can get a little sterile. So it definitely warms it up. And you'll notice as we go through it, there's a lot of warm elements that bring that feature out.
Yeah.
Hey, Miranda,
Yeah.
can you step back in front of the, basically at the stairway?
Yep.
And
Yeah.
and then look down the hall to the circular.
Yeah, for sure.
And from that point of view, can you explain the reason why we jumped into, I know you were going to be getting to it, but I love it from this view.
Oh, sure. What was your question?
Yeah, what's the purpose of that?
The curve soffit.
The curve.
Oh, the curve. Okay, yeah. So yes, the purpose of the curve, more specifically, as you come down into the basement, there's a lot more to get to. And really the idea behind this is that you're creating, when you use curves, you create movement. And the idea is to pull you further into the space. And that was the rationale really for using curves. We don't want you to just stop at the bar and end your experience in the basement. We want you to continue through the rest of the space and really make an experience for the person who's visiting or living there.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So before we get to that beautiful feature, which I love, I want to stop here really quick. So This is a barn door that we custom made, and you'll see this trim detail throughout the space. They wanted some detail in it, again, to warm it up without being too sterile from the modern side of things. But this pattern really gives us a very clean line look without going to that rustic side of things. Especially a lot of times barn doors can do that. They can make it feel really rustic. And this keeps that really contemporary look. And again, as we travel through, I'll try and point out more of these features that you'll see throughout the space. And if we come to the circular space, this really is the pivotal point of the basement. This is that transition point from going onto the rec space, or you can turn left and go more into that private space. You'll see here, I talked about the curves. That circular or that curvature is repeated up in the ceiling. And this detail just gives us, just highlights that entire space, but also focuses on, okay, keep going. We want you to keep exploring. And you'll see up in here, that's where that trim detail continues on. We have some LED up here, really high. And we had even talked about putting a central fixture here, but we didn't want to hide that detail. We wanted to showcase it. And that's why we left it with just some LED lighting.
Yeah,
So
that really came out nice. It makes it looks like it's floating up in the ceiling.
it does, yeah, kind of the way that cove feels, it does make it feel like it's floating.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna turn this way before we get to that big open rec space. There's this little hallway here. And this really creates that dynamic of public to private within this space. So if you do have someone enjoying this space, they feel like they have a little bit of a getaway without someone just cruising right through the main space to get to it. Off to the right here is where that furnace and water heater was. And then if we come into the space, this is where we have that beautiful bedroom down in the basement. So one of the key areas in this space is when we look up again. So this is a tray ceiling within it, and this crown detail, this crown molding detail, is the same detail that they had up in their master bedroom. So a big part of what makes a basement not feel like a basement is truly what you do with the ceiling and how you tie it all together. And because we wanted to bring the idea of upstairs, downstairs, this played a big role in it. And if you remember, we talked about how this window actually went higher than the ceiling or higher than this ductwork. And we actually took this existing window and we were able to lower it so that this is one flat ceiling and that we didn't have a jog in the ceiling.
Yeah, makes a big difference.
It does. It makes a huge difference. It doesn't make it, it makes it feel less like a basement.
Yes.
Because it's this
absolutely.
consistent ceiling, and then you have this cool accent right in the middle, which you would see typically upstairs.
Yeah.
And then if we carry on through, you'll see this is where we venture into the bathroom. Over here to the right is the closet, and then you have some additional storage space here. And you might recall from our ArchiCAD program, a very similar look to this bathroom. So we have our walnut vanity over here to the right, and then this nice big shower with a long linear niche here. So again, really playing off of that modern aesthetic while still being functional. And if we look down here at the shower floor, you'll notice these two slits. This is actually a tileable linear drain. This allows us to achieve this overall consistent look of that tile pattern without having the look of a big shower drain there. So it's a really fun detail to have without seeing this drain that sometimes can just break up your overall look.
Yeah, it really came out nice. Blends right in.
Yeah. And then with this vanity here, you'll see we have a big trough style sink. We did talk about potentially doing 2 sinks, but we really like this idea, again, playing on those long lines. So we have 1 big sink. On either side here, these are operable drawers that we did custom build. They pull out for plenty of storage. And it's still, because it's floating, again, it still plays on that design approach with those clean lines.
I really like how that grain just continues through
Mhm.
the entire front of the
Yep.
vanity.
They used that 1 piece here and then broke it up. And then further, we actually did finger pulls on these drawers at the bottom. So you can pull open the drawer at the bottom. So we didn't need to add hardware to break up that line. And so it still creates function. It gets us the look that we want. Super fun space.
Yeah, yeah, it's great.
So I'm gonna march on out here. And we'll stop here again at our pivotal point because we can and it's fun. So this is giving you that big open look for that what I'm calling the rec or the media space. So they have an area to sit and watch TV. They have a pool table and they have some niches back here that we'll talk about when we venture over. I'm going to start at the back side of the room. Swing on over. So if you recall from when we cruised through the before pictures and the before plan, this actually was where that steel beam was and these steel columns. Now we had lots of conversation around what do we do with that? How do we integrate it in? And this design really encompassed that goal of how do we integrate it and still make it feel like it's part of the space without closing it off. So what we did is we created this half wall with a drink ledge. It grounded the sofa from the other side, but it also provided additional seating. So it really was a multi-purpose, tying in the columns, creating quote unquote separate spaces that are open, but really allowed for that ability for more entertaining. You'll see here the top is also a walnut top, and you'll see those, again, those warm wood elements carried out throughout the space. And if we go a little bit further, this niche here is intended for a dartboard, which played off of that lower ceiling height that goes through is the idea of this long linear feel as you're shooting a dart. So it really played into the function of that. And you'll see over here to the right, there's another drink ledge. So if you're playing, you can set your drink down, but it still allows a lot of natural light.
And more of that walnut and woodwork detail. Yeah.
And we'll get a little closer to this niche and you can see we have a walnut sill and again that same trim detail at the back, really keeping that modern aesthetic consistent throughout the space. So if we continue on, you'll see this bench area, and this was one area that the homeowner, at least initially, really wanted a place for reading. And we had a lot of conversation around it, and we ended up on this bench seat with open cubbies below, which she can put books in. So it really creates a nice little nook around the windows, and it's a multifunctional piece. So you can sit and you can read, or if you're playing pool and you need to take a break or it's not your turn, you can also sit down. So it really works in multiple fashions in terms of where the location is and why we did it. And if we continue on here, this side was intended for a pool cue. So when they get a pool cue, they'll put that in there. But again, you see that detail replicated. And when we spin around, not necessarily the same pattern, but you see that same detail here carried out on the fireplace. And I'm going to go back over here. And talk a little bit about the fireplace while we're here to kind of give you the full effect. This is a linear fireplace. It is gas. And this overall design we landed on for multiple reasons. One, it played into their aesthetic, but two, it really helped with the venting of this unit. The reason for these stepped walls is so that we could go up and actually vent it out towards us. If it went out this wall, it would have vented right into their front entryway, and they didn't want a big vent right there in the front entry. So it played into the aesthetic we wanted, but then also it gave us that opportunity to vent it out to the side of the house and didn't have a big ugly vent there to look at. And if we look over here, and I'm going to spin around again here just in a second. Looking at the hearth. So these were actually 6 wood timbers that we used for the hearth. And from the initial inspiration photos, we talked about concrete, we talked about wood, we talked about just framing it out, we talked about not doing a hearth at all. So there were a lot of different options that we talked about. But we ultimately landed on these wood timbers so that we could tie into the other wood elements within the space. So it really made it much warmer, concrete and colder and more sterile.
Yeah. It looks like a great place to sit too, and
Yes.
about that conversation area.
Mm-hmm. Just so, you know, so much seating and ability to move within the space. It just gives you that flexibility for entertaining as well.
We just want to thank everybody again for coming. Feel free to reach out to us either through this contact form or visit our website. You can get to it there too. All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.